guys are fucking idiots.
You heard it here, guys. These guys are fucking idiots. They're talking about us. That was from Divided Sky, from The Gorge, 1997. I don't know who that taper was talking about, but he was really annoyed.
Could have been talking about the jam charts. He could have been talking about the podcasts. He could have been talking about Goose fans. Who knows? There's so many people that he could have been talking about. So many potentials.
God. Well, I'm just glad we're here together.
I am too.
We're on the eve of a big day for America. We have an election tomorrow, and we decided to do it today instead of later this week, so that we can all just be extremely happy tomorrow about our democratic republic, and all the great things that it provides for us, including free and fair elections. Right, Brian?
Have you ever thought, man, that it's called a democratic republic, and there's a Democrat and a Republican Party? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh my God.
They're
that's
great.
crazy.
This is great dorm room talk.
Never thought about that before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, we decided to do this today because let's celebrate summer US 1997. Let's get our crazy
USA.
whatever is to be will be.
We're gonna just go straight into it. There's nothing else to talk about. We've already talked to each other enough. Is there anything that we don't know that's going on in each other's lives that we should talk about before we start, or should I just get straight into HF Pod? Is there anything we need to talk about? Or is there anything that I don't know that you want me to know?
I'll just throw this out there. Maybe we can riff on this for a second, but I'm currently in the middle of a book that I don't know. I'm curious if you guys have ever experienced this, but I really enjoy it. Like every time I pick this book up, I am illuminated. It is structurally doing things that I find fascinating, but I am reading it so slowly and it is fucking with me so much. Like when we were reading Demon Copperhead and the Bee Sting and Northwoods earlier this year, I would pick those books up and I would read like 60 pages at a time, and I was just like immersed. And for me with this current book, it's like this like crawl to 11 or 12 pages in one sitting, but it's not because I don't like it. I've read a couple books this year that I didn't like. This book I'm digging, and I'm going to recommend to both of you when I get like over the halfway point, but it's a weird sentiment. Have you guys ever experienced this?
Well, is the writing challenging?
Kinda. It's not like, no, it's not like super, yes and no. Like you have to like really be immersed in it, but it's not like it's not like this is advanced honors English.
So it's not like the parts of the Bee Sting where it's like
No,
the wife and there's like no punctuation and it's just like stream of consciousness, and that's
nothing
why
like
it's
that.
challenging. Okay.
No. I
So
don't know what it is.
is the writer good?
The writer's great.
Is the story not as like compelling? I mean, I think all the books you listed, there's something super compelling about every one of those stories that makes you not want to put the book down. Like, does the story have an engine behind it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that part of it is like the Bee Sting, for example. I could see myself in that book.
Yeah, it's very visual.
Yeah.
And I can't see myself in this book at all. So there's like, it's almost like I'm looking through glass at the story rather than feeling like I'm in the middle of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it happens to me. I think every book is like moves at a different pace. I think this book that I'm reading now, which is going to be our first episode of our new podcast, which is called Library Card. I feel that with this book. Like I'm enjoying it. I like it. I think the story is great, but it's like I read for 20 minutes and I look and I've like only gone through like 8 pages. Whereas like with some books, like 20 minutes, I would have gone through 15 pages. It's not like moving as fast as I wanted to, but I also enjoy it every time I read it. And I don't know.
Are you immersed in the world? Like, do you feel immersed in it? It took me a little bit to get immersed in that book, but then I did.
Yeah, now I am. Like, even after a couple pages, it's good to be in that world, you know? But I feel like some of these just move at different paces for whatever reason.
I just wish
usually it's the writing.
Usually
it's the writing for me. Usually it's like things where I'm like, I read a paragraph twice and I'm like, still don't really like know what's going on.
Yeah, or sometimes like the book I just finished, and I hope that didn't stress you out, Brian, when I sent you that I finished that book when you were struggling to read yours slowly. But
Every time the two of you send me a new book and you're like 3 times as many fiction books ahead of me in the year, I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm just going to eternally be stressed out. But go ahead. I'm
It's
like
so
6 tours ahead of you.
Yeah.
So the book that I just finished, very readable, and I was reading it fast, but I wasn't as like immersed in the world or as interested in the characters as I wanted to be. I don't know, but it's the same kind of a thing, just kind of in reverse. Like I'm less interested in the story and the characters, but really readable.
I think that I like the story of what I'm reading, but I haven't reached the point where I truly care about the characters. Like I keep coming back to
Yeah.
the Beasting, but like I cared about all of
That-
those characters. The moment that I was
Huge.
reading about them, I was like, I want you all to be okay, even though I know that this is not going to be okay.
Yeah.
And now I'm reading a book that I'm kind of just like, I kind of expect this to go poorly for you. And I don't know if that's going to like devastate me.
Yeah.
But I also like, I enjoy it. I don't know. It's a strange phenomenon.
But that's a huge part of if I like really love a book or not. And I think with Covenant of Water, it's hard because the characters die a lot. And so you get attached to them and then they're gone.
See, I
Like
think that's
like
such
they
a
keep
great
dying. Like they just keep dying
Multiple
over and over
lives.
again? Is that
Yeah,
what-
multiple times.
multiple deaths. Multiple deaths.
You know what I mean.
I think that's a good example. That's a good rationale for why I feel the way I do about this book. I'm not attached to any of the characters because they keep disappearing. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
I can see that.
I like the story. I mean, I'm really curious to see where it goes because I'm like 3/4 of the way through and I know something's going to happen and it's going to be great. But it's not like you're following the same people through this journey because they keep getting knocked off by like strange curses. Spoiler alert.
I could go into really kind of a lot of depth about what I think pulls you into that book, but I feel like we should wait and
We
save
should
it for
do
the
that on the
podcast.
podcast. On the
we're
podcast.
gonna
about
we're
that
gonna
book.
do it on the podcast.
Okay.
I will say though, RJ, this is the last thing I'll say about books. This is our library card preview episode. Everything else will be behind a $50 paywall, which is basically the cost of books in 2024. So get prepared, guys. This is all you're getting. That's a total joke. You guys should come back and listen to our.
We
free
do everything
podcast.
for free all the time.
Everything's
You know
for
that
free.
about us.
What was I going to say? RJ's text about his favorite or his great Substack piece about his favorite books of the year so far made me go back, and I am compiling. And this is all so that Megan's happy. My favorite fiction books, my favorite nonfiction books, my favorite audiobooks, and then all combined, what were my favorite books? So
I
Wow.
like
you know,
that. I
know,
do like your
lots
list,
of
and I
lists,
like
lots of lists
that
are
it's going to
coming.
be, specified audio and not. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
All right. So that was only 8 minutes and 24 seconds for those of you keeping track. So we're ahead of schedule. We're at number 6. We're at the number 6 tour of all time. This was the number 3 vote from the fans.
I know. Wow.
So we're talking about summer 97, summer US tour 97, of course. There's a bunch of live bait tracks, which I'll link to again from this tour. Not a lot of releases, sadly. Maddening.
Not a lot of releases and not as many live baits as they should have, I think.
Should just release the whole tour. I mean, what are we doing here?
Come on.
What are we doing? Megan, what was happening in 1997 as far as you know?
As far as I know, a lot was happening in 97. I think it's important to mention that they had gone to Europe in February and March, which everyone knows, but they had done that looking for a place to practice this idea of playing less notes because they went on this big arena tour in the fall of 96 that they felt was maybe not as successful. And they were trying to workshop this new sound, but couldn't do it here in the US. So they come back from Europe in March and they record the first session of what will be the story of the Ghost and the Sicket disc. And then they go back to Europe in June and July for 19 shows. And that's actually Top Tour 21. So we talked about that earlier in the year. Just fantastic tour. And then they come back to the US with what they found in Europe. And these are 19 shows make up this tour. They start with these 3 legendary shows in the Southeast. They go to the Southwest, up the West Coast, the Midwest, upstate New York, and they end in Maine for the Great Went, which is their second festival. There are 107 jam chart entries for this tour. So 5.6 jams per show. That is definitely one of our higher jams per show ratios. So we are in very good territory here for jams. And not a lot of debuts because they're playing a lot of new music, but it's US debuts, all of it. So not actual debuts. So these aren't like pumped up jam chart numbers.
Brian, what do you have to say about this?
So this tour is really, really interesting because there's, spoiler alert, but I'm pretty sure this isn't spoiling anything for anyone. There's one more tour from 1997 that we are going to talk about. And this is kind of that bridge between, as Meg noted, we talked about summer Europe 97. We're going to talk about fall 97 at some point. I don't know when. We still have yet to figure out where that lands. This is the bridge tour. This is, when we talked about summer Europe, we talked about it in the context of this incredibly loose experimental tour where the band ultimately decided, let's just throw whatever sounds are in our heads, whatever ideas at the wall. Let's take what worked from the Bearsville session, and let's just experiment as much as possible. And there's really nobody looking at them. Like Europe 97 would be very different if they did Europe 2025. You know, they're going to webcast those shows. There's going to be shows on Live Fish immediately after they conclude. Europe 97, they're still kind of like able to go there and disappear for a bit. And the idea of hearing those shows before people were hearing the summer US shows or seeing the summer US shows is kind of far removed. But there's this immense amount of risk involved in coming back and putting yourself in front of 15, 20,000 people night to night and playing a very new sound of music that is going to be abrasive for some people, may turn some people away. But ultimately, when I think about this tour, when I think about why it's ranked where it is, this is Phish putting together the final pieces of a band that can hang for 20 to 30 more years. This is the reinvention, but also a sound that is so democratic and more accessible than what we talked about in our last tours episode where we talked about summer 95. This is kind of like big tent Phish. They can get really weird, but ultimately it's going to be grounded in the style of music that a lot of people want to hear and a lot of people want to come back to. And a lot of people want to re-listen to because A, it's really fun, but also it's a totally new flavor of what this band has offered for the previous 14 years of their career. And as a result, it leads us down this new rabbit hole that we're still living in, where Phish can kind of play any sound and make it their own. And you hear that really happen through, I mean, almost immediately this tour, essentially immediately the second that they come out and play Ghost, and one of the best versions of Ghost from the year.
Yeah, I love that idea of risk. I think when I was listening back to this tour, I was thinking a lot about when we look back on 97, it's such a storied year. We think, of course, like these tours are amazing, but it wasn't guaranteed that this tour was going to kill. Like they hadn't played in the US since the New Year's Eve run. They hadn't played a full tour since fall 96, which was pretty good tour. I mean, it made it to our top 25 list. It was number 25, but considering it was in between these two massive years of Phish, it felt a little hard for them too, because it was in an arena. They weren't packed all the arenas. Like there wasn't like a definite way forward for the band that they knew it was going to be like, you know, that they were going to have this wild success. And I think the fact that they found this funk passageway that we talked about when we talked about the summer tour, that it being a destination to future jamming ideas for them, bringing that home and playing it here was a huge risk. And opening those shows with so much authority and swagger, it just shows how confident they were in their risk taking. And I think that when you think about the tour, I think it really has a big narrative arc in that it starts in this really like kind of authoritative, punchy, funky vibe, and then it really ends with them exploring like a lot of dissonance and a lot of really beautiful ambience, and like seeing that kind of flow through the tour is actually really magical, and I hadn't really realized how strong that was until I listened to it chronologically for this project. But it's unbelievable how punchy it is in the beginning, and then how open and kind of free. If you think about listening to like the first 3 shows back to back, and then in listening to like the Down with Disease and the Went Gin, and like some of those other big jams at the Went, it was just like crazy how different it sounds and how much the funk opened them up.
Man, we were on the exact same page. I was gonna wait to do my big reveal of
Oh,
my
no.
hot take. No. I love how you did it. My big hot take of this tour, and I'm really curious what RJ thinks about this, because this is RJ's point he's made, and I think really accurately throughout this series. And as we get to the top 5 here, there's a lot of like reflection I think we're all doing of like why we picked certain tours when we did. What do these tours say about this band? And I think if there's one thing critical we've all realized as we've gone through these tours and we've listened to, I mean, ultimately by the end of this year, we'll have listened to 25 Phish tours in basically in full. That's a lot. That's a
It's
lot
been a
of
lot.
music. The most critical thing that I can say, and I think RJ has said this really well, is that sometimes with some of these tours, they start to sound very samey. And you start to hear this one sound that worked at the beginning of the tour also work at the end of the tour in a way that doesn't necessarily showcase progress. It just shows like, hey, this is the sound that we like playing in right now. And as a fan base, we tend to really like that sound. This tour is the first time that I found that from the start of the tour to the end of the tour, they are almost a completely different band. And I think a lot of that is that looseness that we think about Summer US and Summer Europe as 2 distinct tours. Their tours separated by 11 days. That doesn't happen
Yeah.
anymore. Like that is like, for all intents and purposes, it's a 2-month tour on 2 different continents. But we think about it in the way that Phish operates as 2 separate things, but that looseness that they allowed themselves to play in Europe finds its way here, and so that by the end of the tour, as you just said, you play a jam back to back like The Disease and the Bathtub Gin, that are 2 completely different sounding jams that have no business being played side by side to each other, but showcase how much this band has learned by injecting this new sound and this new idea and this new philosophy, and how freeing all that is to them as they're moving through the summer in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only caveat is that like, I'm pretty biased because this is when I started going to more shows and I was in college, which is just fucking awesome. But this tour is so fun. Like it's so fun. It's so
It's
awesome.
so
I mean,
fun.
like I think the context here is that like we were all waiting for the tapes for these shows, and because the Europe tapes, which was the last music that they played, were like slow. It's took several weeks to get Europe tapes, at least for
Mhm.
me. Whereas the US tapes you could get within like a week if you knew people. So we're like, we didn't really know what this was going to sound like. And I think throughout the tour, like you start and there's just like from the Virginia Beach show, it's so fun, and then it gets more interesting. And by the end, like the fact that you end with the Bathtub Gin from the Great Went, which is like one of the most emotionally resonant things Phish has ever done. Like it, and you compare that to the Ghost from Virginia Beach, and they're just so different, but like part of the same journey. And then it just sets you up for the fall tour, which is, we may or may not talk about it. I don't know if it made the list of the top 25, but if it did, we will be talking about it because, man, it just there's no like sameness as this tour goes on. It gets more interesting and more different, and there are more paths. And I think if you like listen to the even just the first 2 shows, you might be like, okay, this sound might get a little old, and then they just keep evolving as they go. I mean, it's just, to me, this is what Phish sounds like summer and fall, along
I
with like
love
fall
that.
95, but this is like the song. This is it. This is the sound.
This is like the end of my innocent time with Fish. Like, this is the last year that I listened to everything that Fish played and saw a bunch of Fish. I saw the first 3 shows on this tour, and I saw the New Year's run, and I saw some shows in fall too. But this was kind of the end of my like being totally obsessed with them before I took a break. And so to me, this is kind of like the first time I saw them change in a way that I was super into. But I'll never forget what it felt like being at that Virginia Beach show when they came out, and they sounded so different from what I'd heard them play in fall 96. And I had gone to the New Year's Eve show for 96 too. And it was just like, it didn't even make sense. It was such a different band, and it was so fun. And I remember just because of like the energy and what people were doing at that time, what was kind of going around in the crowd, it was meeting the moment really, really well. It was just so playful and so fun. And I remember being blown away in the moment.
I think the only nit I would pick, and it's a hard nit to pick because what RJ said was ultimately subjective, but like to my ears, like what sounds like Fish is 94 or 95 when I think about them in like their purest form. To me, this is kind of to build off of a few things that we're saying. Like I've made this argument before, but like I feel like the band could have left it all behind after 12/31/95, and they have a legacy that we would still be talking about to this day. But the fact that they decided to reinvent themselves and change that original sound that they had and try to find something new and a new approach so that they could showcase the talents of all 4 members rather than in a lot of cases just one member. Like they have never stayed in the funk sound. There are moments where we hear funk Fish come out in the last 27 years. But to me, what this proved and what this did for the band was to say, whatever we have as a core works. That idea of musical connectivity, humor, communication, this kind of like dexterity, this risk taking that we have, like that as a core piece is not beholden to one style of music. And so for this period in time, we're going to use this kind of rhythmic funk type of approach to communicate where we're at. In 2 years time, it's going to be much more bass heavy, a little bit dancey. A couple of years from there, it's going to be sludgy. As we get into like the late 3.0 and 4.0 era, it's going to be kind of this amalgamation of all these different styles of music that we love to play within Singular Jams. Like without this tour, without this year, I do wonder if Fish gets stuck in a singular sound. Like you hear, like, and you've heard this with jam bands, where they find a sound, it works, they jam off of it. It's that reinvention and that total change of who they were that defines kind of where they're going to go for the next 30 years, at least to my ears.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, without any of this stuff, nothing else happens. I guess that's a very obvious point. But I think what you're saying is the sound. If you like remove this sound or this like direction, they wouldn't have been able to do anything else, which I think is true.
Well, there's an intentionality to changing. Like they had an intention to change, because of the big arenas that they were playing in, the way that the sound travels, and they had to play less notes. But then also Trey's talked about not wanting to be a band that where he just like did guitar solos and jams all the time, right? They didn't want to do that anymore. So the search for reinvention, I think, has defined them as a band, and this is where it starts for sure.
I also just want to point out that RJ seeing all these shows in college is the greatest thing in the world, because I saw 5 Fish shows when I was in college, and they were Vegas 04 and Coventry. So you unquestionably,
I was also in college too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
This is after my sophomore year of college. It was pretty great. Pretty good. My parents came to the Raleigh show as well.
See, this was before my freshman year. So now you know that despite what it might look like, Megan is 10 years younger than me, she's actually not.
It's so crushing.
All right. So okay, what are we going to do? I mean, how do we even go from there? We love this tour. It's awesome. Maybe this is going to happen every time from now on. Because
I have one question before we go on. And that is, I remember when we were drafting these tours, I was very anxious as this tour was not getting selected. And the fans have it at 3. And I don't know if we have underrated it, especially after listening back to it and what we've been talking about here. I don't know if we've underrated it. And listeners don't know what we have next, but we do. But I'm curious as to see if some of those tours will sound and will be more important historically. Some of them are chosen for historical purposes, but I don't know. I'm just curious as to if you guys started thinking about that at all leading up to this during this week or not. But I'm feeling like it might be a little underrated.
Wow. That's a good place to be,
Yeah.
It's a good place to be while we're talking about it.
Yeah.
You don't want to I've had the experience of feeling the opposite where I'm like,
yeah,
this should be in the top 25, and that's not as fun.
No.
I don't think that it's 3. I think that is entirely due to The Great Went and to the fact that it is a tour played during the period that a lot of Phish fans were in college.
Yeah. It's nostalgic.
But I do think, as I'm a couple tours ahead in my listening, just because of the way I listen to music, I think it's maybe one. I mean, it's 6. So like, I don't think it's like the top 3 that is set in stone. I think we got those right. And when we get to that, but I do think that it's perhaps underrated by one tour. There is one that we have in the top 5 that I think we all agreed upon for historical purposes needed to be there. That listening back to it, I was like, we did right. And this was a very smart move by us. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to it for us to all talk about it.
I think it could be, I agree with you. It could be 1 or 2.
Be top 5, no?
It could be 1 or 2 spots higher. I think I like this better than our number 4 tour, for example.
Same.
That's the one that I think could have been swapped.
But the next one is the one we're going to get the most heat for.
Yeah, but the next one we did right. So this is an awesome conversation for people to listen to because they're like, wait, what is that?
What are you talking about?
But I think the simplest way to put it is I think we slightly underrated it while also kind of slapping fans on the wrist for putting it at number 3.
Thank you guys for participating in this with us. All right. Let's talk about jams. Let's just go to some jams. What do you guys got? I mean, there's so much, but where would you?
This is so overwhelming.
I know, but you got to just choose.
So I'm going to go just right out the gates. Like the first 3 shows, boom, awesome stuff. You guys have all heard it. It's all released on Live Phish. If I said something about it, it would be just almost redundant at this point in time. So I want to go to what I think is one of the most shocking, great shows of the tour early on, which is 725. The first set ends with a Gin into Makisupa and AC/DC Bag segment that Gin definitely touches on the funk, but this kind of speaks to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago in the sense that like the band felt like they were evolving in real time and it felt like you were hearing practice on a day-to-day basis. Every time they played a show. The entire second set of this show is also phenomenal. I'm just pulling up right now. This is from Dallas, Texas. Bob Galati is on the second drum set for this. You get the first ever Chalk Dust jam into Taste, into Yamar, into a drum segment, into Ghost, into Character Zero. It's just super fluid jamming. But really that like initial segment of Gin, Makisupa, AC/DC Bag just sounds like a band that is taking 3 songs that have been a part of their catalog for 7 to 12 years. I mean, Makisupa has been around since the start, but like 3 of their older songs and giving a totally new spin on them and fusing them together in a way that would not have happened a year prior. And so you hear them almost like hearing their songs and their sound in a new way in real time in a way that just blows me away.
That show is a perfect example of even the shows that aren't super highly rated on this tour are so excellent. I got to the problem this weekend where I was Saturday night, still had 6 shows to listen to yesterday on Sunday because I didn't want to stop playing these shows. Like there's a lot of shows that are no skip shows and it becomes a problem because you're like, wait, I just want to keep listening to it. And that show, so many great moments in that show. And it's not even one of the like high marks of the tour
Yeah.
because it's the bar is just so high already. It's crazy.
Yeah, that it also just shows there that the Jin gets into this like slightly melodic space, and that's, to me, that's the part that evolves over the course of the tour. And you
Yes.
hear
Yeah.
it more and more as it goes on, which is
Yes.
really cool. The Bob Galetti stuff and like the banter and Yamar, that's just, it's really fun. I just want to say that the 2 quick things. One is that Trey was already doing the re-inviting guests, after the first night in '97,
This
which
isn't a
probably
Billy thing.
it wasn't just a Billy Strings thing. And the other, I just want to go back. Can I go back to the first show? I'm sure we'll talk about the show in general, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the theme from the Virginia Beach show
Yes.
with Leroy Moore. I think I would choose that for my sit-in draft. It might be like,
Same. Okay, we're gonna have to fight for that one
all
because
right,
I was
well,
there, RJ.
see. All
Were you
right,
there
we'll see
too?
what happens.
We'll
No,
see.
but we'll see what happens with the draft
That's
order
the
when we
best
do.
sit-in.
It's pretty good.
Oh my
It's really good.
God.
Gets
It
pretty
like
weird. and-
swells.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, that's one of the
Sorry
best
to
themes
steal
of
it.
all time.
We're gonna have
That's
to turn Grand Rapids Shade into a drinking game for this game. So it's for the show, this podcast. So
Megan, what's a jam that you wanna make sure you talk about?
Okay, well, there's one I want to talk about, but before, I know I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to just say really briefly that the Cities Bowies from Ventura, which everybody knows about, but the only reason I think this jam is so fascinating in context of this tour is because it goes the opposite. It starts in ambience and goes to funk, and that journey is wild. And I didn't realize when I've listened to that jam before that it's the opposite of like so many of the jams on this tour and how fucking cool
point.
that is. It's so cool. Listening to it in that lens just like blew me away. But the jam I want to talk about is from the next night at Shoreline. And I think the show is awesome. But the Runaway Jim on Live Bait 11, it opens set to 24 minutes. It's the perfect encapsulation of summer 97. And the end, kind of like what you're talking about, RJ, when they find the melody and the ambience, they get to that like beautiful ambient space, and Paige finds this melody in the piano, and it's so beautiful. And I just love towards the middle and then the end of this tour how they just keep finding like moments of just total gorgeousness. Like I don't want to say bliss because that like sounds like it's peaking and it's not shimmery. It's really contemplative and so patient and lovely. And this is a really beautiful example of it in this Runaway Jim from Shoreline.
it's something that we'll talk about when we talk about Fall 97. Like the label of funk is slightly misleading because obviously they utilize it, but what you're talking about in that jam is something you hear in the Cordell Jam and the Deer Creek Cities, or in the Bathtub Gin, or in a ton of jams that are to come in Fall 97. Off the top of my head, the Bowie from Philadelphia. This like kind of achingly sad melodic jamming that was nowhere to be found in 95 and not even really anywhere in 96. And it's kind of like this really advanced, like mature style of jamming where the band is having a lot of fun. And you think about that with like that Bowie Cities Bowie, where like it gets into some of the most like gooey funk I've ever heard them play. Like,
yeah,
I can't dance, but like I can't help but dance when like they get into that like just really fast rhythm and like Trey's just hitting those chords. But a lot of that is surrounded by, and the Jim is a perfect example, these melodies that just like seem to drop out of the sky in a way that like I don't think that they were planning for when they decided, hey, it would be best if we or whenever they realize like playing in this kind of funk democratic fashion would be best for them.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like they're discovering it in the moment, which is part of why this tour is so thrilling. It's so thrilling. I think also if you think about like the Down with Disease from the Went, it's just, it has that feeling of like you can almost feel them like using the funk to head to the ambience, and at knowing that like Fall 97 and 98 are on the like precipice. It's just, it's cool listening back to that.
I will say, I think I think that Runaway Jim is the first like really adventurous jam of the tour. You know, there's long jams,
Oh
but
yeah, I
like they
hadn't
all,
really
I
thought
think
about that.
I feel like they all kind of, you know, are just building toward like the Bowies and the Ghosts, and there's
Mhm.
great jams, but I feel like this is the first one that's really like there's a lot of different segments. It's got like its own kind of propulsion to it. It's really pretty
It's a bit
awesome.
of an outlier in that sort of standpoint. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think
Um,
about that, but you're right.
Ev Dude says that 731 desperately needs a live Fish release. They basically that's how I feel about every show on this tour.
I know.
It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing, guys? We have, so we got Virginia Beach in July 2020. That was after the Dinner and a Movie, right? So that's when they
Yeah.
released that. They released 722 in August of 2008. They released 723 in 2021. And is that it?
This Ventura
Oh, and Ventura
730.
box set came out in
Oh, right.
2013. That was
2013.
both 98, 97. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, right. There's 2 years. Yeah. All right. I forgot
Oh, I
about that.
forgot that. Right. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So what else? What do we got here? I think that's it.
I
I
mean,
have some
there's
more
a lot
jams,
more.
but
I got some
Brian,
more
you
jams.
go. You go. Brian, take out some jams.
I wanna just give a big shout out to 3 jams from the Phoenix show, which get a little bit overshadowed. But Gumbo has been officially released, but that is one of my starred. If you have not listened to that in some time, you need to go back and check it out. I think that there's a quote in the Fish book where Trey talks about how, you know, throughout the years they would be on tour and they would be listening to other music on the bus. And throughout Fall 97, what powered them was the Phoenix Gumbo and the Denver Ghost. And it was the first time that they ever felt like our music is actually pushing us forward. It's only like 13 or 14 minutes, but it just like gets into such a zone that it sounds like where they were going, where they were ultimately going towards. But don't sleep on the second set has an amazing Run Like an Antelope that is just
Mhm.
so wild and out there. I believe it segues into Waiting in the Velvet Sea. Don't yell at me yet. I'm pulling up the set list now. There's a lot of cover here. Yeah, it goes right into Waiting in the Velvet Sea, and then you get a really wild twist a couple songs later that just shows that, like, to come to RJ's point about that Runaway Jim, like even as there is a little bit more focus to this playing because they know the sound that works, they're allowing themselves to just open up and experiment in some really bizarre ways that, you know, is gonna there's like an argument to be made that like the type of music they play on this tour is what's going to lead them to be able to play at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning at Big Cypress, or some of the really long,
Mhm.
bizarre jams we talked about from 2.0, from the 2003 tours, or some of the long 35, 40-minute long jams we've heard in the last couple of years. Like allowing themselves to just play these songs out and just follow wherever they take them is going to be a huge lesson for the years going forward.
Yeah, I love that gumbo. That is like, I want to live inside that groove. It's so good. That one, and obviously, like, we don't have to talk about it, but the Ghost from Lakewood, it's like, that's probably one of my top 5 jams of all time. And I won't spend time on it because everybody knows it. But that is the tightest groove Fish has ever played, I think. Like, that's the tightest they've ever sounded.
Hmm.
Like, it's so fucking tight. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's just
But then,
like,
yeah, and the
yeah,
tempo is like really, really fast. Like
it's just in the pocket.
they're
Yeah.
so excited to play a Ghost like
They
every
love
time, which is
every
just really
time,
great to hear.
every night. Yeah, it's
Um,
so great.
Our friend Craig said he cornered Mike in the lot at Gorge and asked him to play the Lumpy Head song from Europe, and Mike just sort of frowned and said that's not a real song.
Oh my god, that's
Great.
such a good story.
It's a good story. I
It's
just wanted, I
amazing
don't,
because of like what Carini would become for this
Right?
band
yeah.
10, 15, 20 years later in a way that nobody could have predicted.
I don't know if we're gonna go back to Virginia Beach, but all the Waiting in Velvet Sea with the sirens at the beginning is just like I feel like I just want them to bring that back. Bring
Oh,
the
why aren't
sirens
they
back.
doing that? It's so beautiful and
It's
haunting.
beautiful. It's all that exactly. I guess we can go. Well, let me just tell you
Wait.
guys about my Deer Creek experience.
Yeah, because
Should
I
we
want
do
to talk
that?
about Deer Creek too. So
Okay.
please tell us about it so I can talk about it too.
So 2 months before the tour, I graduated from high school and I went out to see 4 shows: Tinley Park, Alpine, and then the 2 Deer Creek shows. We like camped and went, it was like getting away from home. But after collecting hundreds of tapes from 90 to 95 or 96, I think I was like, I definitely had expectations about how I wanted them to sound. And I do think as the tour goes on, it got like, some of these jams were so slow and strange and weird. I remember at Deer Creek, the 810 show, I probably talked about this before. I remember it being like it was so slow and it was so weird. The cities, that second set. And I was not like super thrilled with it. I mean,
Yeah.
the hood is like the coolest thing that's ever happened. But I remember being a little bit like, what is this? What is this shit? And I remember being like, this is like not what I wanted, and now I admit to being wrong about that, but like,
Well, you're a connoisseur already. And, when you go and you expect a certain kind of something that you've spent a lot of time listening to and it's totally different, that's a lot. It's a lot to take in. I think that that's totally normal. I was not a connoisseur then. I was listening. I listened to everything and I was following, but I wasn't analyzing anything. I was partying a lot too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it was different. I feel like my expectations, but I don't remember feeling
you
like
didn't
that,
have
but
them.
I didn't have them. Maybe I
That's
don't
the whole
know.
point. That's
Maybe.
better.
Maybe
That's better.
Yeah,
We've taught, like, right?
maybe.
Having the
Maybe.
expectations, there's only one thing that can happen.
Yeah, but you
What?
have them regardless. What?
What?
If you have expectations, they're going to lead to disappointment. Like, it's clear.
But not always. Sometimes you go to
Almost
Mexico
always.
and Dick's, and then it's all fulfilled for you.
It's the one thing I've learned on my
I-
fish journey.
So I have a slightly different question for you, RJ, because I think there's no way to let go of who you are and what you do, and you do it right the way that you do it, and that's just the way it goes. And just
Thanks,
explain it. It's cool.
It's cool.
When did you? Because you've talked about that show a lot, and you've
Yeah.
talked a lot about the experience you've had. Maybe not to this audience, but I've heard you talk about it. We've talked about this. I talked about this during a winter 2003 tour that I
Yeah.
had a very similar experience with my very first show, where I went in with this expectation based on what I'd heard and what I liked about this band, and they played completely differently to what I expected and thought of this band going in. And it was one of those experiences where it fucked with my perception of Fish. And it took me years to be like, wow, I think I actually saw a really good show to kick off my entire life of seeing this band. And that has made that show like enriched and deeper for me. But like, when did that show hit for you, and what was it about it?
That's a good, 810 specifically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Probably in the last 5 years. I didn't go back to
Wow.
these shows that much. I think probably when we first talked about it at some point when we talked about it for this show or Undermine in a way that made me have to go and listen to it differently.
I'm pretty sure it was we remember we did 25 shows leading up to fall 97.
Yeah.
Like the 25
Mhm.
most important Fish shows in the 90s. I don't know who made that list. Someone.
Yeah. Someone.
Person.
person.
And some people said it was a good list. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Some people, many
But I'm
people,
pretty sure
many people are saying or
many
talking
people
about it.
said it
People
was a
are
good list.
saying.
So many people have come up to me with tears in their eyes and they've said, sir, who made this list? Who made this list? Who made this beautiful
Is
list?
this thing on? So yeah, I think that it is one of the more, like, I think that you saw a very difficult show at a young point. Like, there's a
Yeah.
reason why Rolling Stone wrote about that show being the band pissing in the ears of the listener, and the listeners happily lapping it up, because they're taking a song like Harry Hood and they're playing elements of the peak of that song in a different key,
Yeah.
in a way that makes you feel differently than you're supposed to feel when they play Harry Hood. They play a second set where they decide, we're going to dedicate like 12 minutes to rotating around to other instruments and playing a song we only will play like 4 different times. I don't know. I think ultimately, like, those are, I said this a little bit earlier, but like, Craig says it here, and I think that's a really good point. People really need to let go of 1994 Fish. So I wasn't
Mhm.
around, but like I remember reading that there was a lot of people that jumped off in 1997 because that kind of happy, whimsical, kind of storytelling nature of Fish was gone, and this dark, evil, really maniacal band that was interested in these kind of weird abstract sounds, and it was slow and it was sludgy, like that was all happening in real time and you were seeing it at that point in time. But ultimately, like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that, like, that cracked open, anything is possible with Fish going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I also
definitely.
think that, you know, so many things we don't appreciate in the moment when they're new. You know, you have to look back and like listen to them later. I'm pretty sure if I was at this 810 show, I would have been like, what is going on in the second set? And now I listen to it and I'm like, this is one of the coolest fucking second sets ever, because it is just one entire narrative arc. It's just a total flow. It's them completely like giving into the muse and just going with whatever is in the moment. It takes such courageous, like, risk taking as a performer to go out and play a set like this. It's absolutely wild. But it's not at all what you would expect to see a Fish show with. And I do think the scene, you know, this is the first kind of summer that they're fully on their own after, like, you know, 96 was like such a transition year musically and also in the scene with Jerry dying the year before. And so much was fluctuating for them. And 97 was like their first full year of coming back and being like, this is who we are now. We're different and we're huge. We're a big band, you know, and I think that that was really different. And the crowd was really different then. And the drugs started to get different. I think a lot changed during this year that affected the scene and the band and the music. And I think that there was a lot of reactions to it in real time. And I think that that's actually one theme that, and one takeaway that I'm jumping ahead, but I think it's kind of relevant to bring it up here. And that is that the other big thing I think that happened on this tour is that the band realized the audience would go on this journey with them. Like, a majority of the audience was like, you're going to change your sound. You're going to totally do something different. Like, okay, we're still going to show up and we're still
Yeah.
going to be excited. And like, you think about it kind of in the context of like the art that happened at the Great Went, and when they're passing the Seas of Art, and, you know, Trey's talking about it like representing like the energy that goes between the crowd and them. And then the hood happens and the first glow stick war happens, and it kind of explodes, and Trey's like, oh, you're making this art for me too. And there's so many moments of that I think that this tour really kind of settled that for the band, that like people were going to be with them even if they completely changed everything up and took wild risks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a lesson we talked about in our last episode with Summer 95. Like, those are really difficult long jams that they learned the fan base will be able to, they'll be able to hang, you know, even when we go completely off, you know, off the radar. But here they're doing it in a way that is under a new style of music that they have not played prior. I think one thing
Yeah.
that's really interesting is, like, you know, the 810 show, that is on my list of shows that needs to get released. I'm kind of
100%.
Yeah.
blown away that we don't
Yeah.
have a fully released copy of that. It's one of the best shows, one of the most complete, fascinating shows of the overall tour of their entire era or of their entire career. But you go one night earlier, Alpine Valley. I don't want to steal your thunder in any sort of way, Meg, so I'm just going to try to support it. But like, you have this really magical moment in the middle of the second set where they go Mike's song into Ain't Love Funny, this cover that I fully advocate for coming back and being in the rotation. It's beautiful, it's really sad, it's really aching, but like, you don't hear them really in that Mike song lean into funk. You
Mhm.
hear them though play within each other in a really fascinating way. It's kind of this like hive mind approach, and then it lands in a song that, when you think about the stereotypical sound of 1997, has almost no place in the era, but fits perfectly in terms of what they're communicating, and works to me just as well as the next night's fully, just like, we're going to give you guys a peek inside the jamming rehearsals of that second set in Deer Creek. It's just wild to see from night to night they play in these two very different styles of music that, I mean, most bands would do a separate tour as a result of. Like
Yeah.
this is the same band evolving over time.
I like that example a lot because that is one of my favorite moments of this tour. That Ain't Love Funny. It's just absolutely beautiful moment. Yeah, it's so cool to think about how they were playing and how different it was at times, just in the same night to night, and even in the same night. It's pretty cool. But man, that 810 show, RJ, like you were there, and that's fucking cool because that Good Times Bad Times is unbelievable.
Yeah, so strange the whole thing. But they do, like in the cities, they get into this like melodic space, and I mean the hood has that like major minor thing that just is so powerful. It's such
So
a
pretty.
amazing. Okay, so we have to keep talking, but we should take a quick break, and then we should talk more about shows and jams for you all. I was talking to someone this weekend who's a fan of the pod, and they said that they listen to these top 25 shows, and then they make a list of shows they have to go back to because we say such insightful things. So good
That's
job, guys.
nice. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we can't forget at the end to give a list of what we've done so far.
Yeah.
The top 25 so far. Just making a note.
I also admittedly have been very, very bad this year about posting my lists and recommendations on our HF Pod blog, which is still a thing. I will be doing that once we conclude this. So you'll have the entire 25. These are the shows you should listen to. These are the jams that we recommend you guys listen to. So that will come as well, so that there's at least something of a guide. Because like as I think about this, as we get closer to number one, we're like compiling. If you ever like, I don't know what to listen to, you can literally utilize our lists here, and you have like the best Phish jams and best Phish shows that have ever been played at your disposal.
Yeah,
it's a pretty epic list. Yeah, we'll get out, and I'll put what we've got so far, the top whatever we've done so far, up through 6. I'll post that.
So let's just talk about the last show of the tour. Can we do that?
Yeah, we got to go there.
Well, can we just talk about the Great Went? Let's just talk about the Great Went in general, because this is proof of concept. It worked the year before. Clifford Ball, amazing. Neither of you went to the Great Went.
No.
Mm-mm.
Did you have an idea as you were on this tour that this is leading to another Clifford Ball, but like even more remote and wild and far away and incredible?
Yeah, I don't even remember it being like on my radar. I mean, like I knew it was happening, but it was like not. It was just like not a thing I was doing.
You knew you were going to these shows, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was like in another world.
Yeah, Ohio. These were really far, and they were right before college started. So like that's why I couldn't go to the Clifford Ball. I was going to school in Arizona, and it was like 4 days before school started, and I couldn't afford to like fly back for school. And so I'm pretty sure it was a similar kind of thing where it's just going to be too far. Yeah, I was like working, just busy, but I don't remember like it being a big thing that I was like upset. I was really focused on like not missing the New Year's runs at this point. That was like a big focus for me. But yeah.
Can I share one little anecdote?
Yeah.
So that week is the first time I ever heard of Phish.
Wow.
How do you remember that? That's amazing. You have the best memory of anybody I know. This is crazy.
It's very weird, but thank you for complimenting it. I was at summer camp, which was about 40 minutes away from Alpine Valley. And all of the camp counselors in my summer camp were talking about how they just went to see Phish at Alpine Valley. And I don't know why, but it like will never like leave my brain how many times this one guy said, I just want to go to the Great Went. And like the phrase, the Great Went, just sounded so weird. Like that was just like who? Like,
yeah, what is that?
What weird words to combine together? And now I know like the Twin Peaks thing and obviously Phish, but like I remember like I just remember like Phish, Ghost, Alpine Valley, the Great Went. These were words that like would come to mean a lot to me. And I heard them as a 12-year-old boy at summer camp who was like probably homesick to a certain degree.
I love how I'm like, I don't really remember what it was like being at this like famous show in the 90s. And Brian's like, I remember the exact moment that I first
Yeah.
heard Fish. It's so
Yeah.
great. I just thank you for like having a collective memory for the rest of us.
I'm just a really big fan.
The reason that I love the 817 show so much is that there's a lot happening, including like you guys know how entertained I am by Buffalo Bill still every time I hear it. But there's two things in the show that I think are really awesome. One is that the tweezer is like, this is like we have arrived in fall 97 in this tweezer, and you can hear it kind of evolve over time. But it's like that sound, the whole thing like comes together in that tweezer, and it's. But can we just talk about? Let's just talk about the bathtub gin for a second, because this is like, it's like basically like the being at the end of like a marathon, and you like turn the corner to the last stretch, and in the last stretch you're just like, it's adrenaline and it's like emotion. It's just so incredible, and the way that it like winds down after the peak is just feels so emotional, and it's just. What a fucking incredible moment. That's like a top moment in Fish history. Just every time I listen to it, it's like, fuck, kidding me?
It's so effortless and cohesive. It just feels like one giant, not really exhale, but just one giant like piece of breath. I don't know how to explain it. There's it never seems to be searching. It always feels so like sure of its path, but it's so different from the disease, which is like right before it. I mean, that gets really like quiet and sexy and like really pretty and contemplative, but it's not like this. This is just, it's just pure joy, but not in an obvious way. I don't know. It's so beautiful. It's absolutely stunning, Jam.
Yeah. Listening to the tour we're going to talk about next week, and a lot of the earlier tours, a lot of the really good earlier tours, this kind of hopeful melodic playing, the hose, you would hear in Harry Hood, you would hear in Slave to the Traffic Light, almost primarily.
Mhm.
And everything else from a jamming standpoint would either get really weird or really aggressive or really riffy or really quick. Like the idea that they took that emotion and put it as the capstone of an entire jam, and it all was made up on the fly. Like everything else I've said that I love about this tour, like that is maybe the most impressive thing, because it's them writing songs and writing music in real time and stuff that like when you listen back to you play that for someone who has no idea what improvisational music is, what Fish is, and it sounds like something that's pre-written, that they're literally reading off charts. And then the fact that it comes after this like spaced out, jazzy, really weird, slow, Down with Disease. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made. Oh, don't accuse me of being hyperbolic here, but there's an argument to be made that this is the best set that Fish has ever played in their entire history.
Definitely one of the best for sure.
If you think of the time and place, tour finale, festival finale, Disease, Gin, Uncle Pen, 2001, the first one to really go out there.
So good too.
It's a great one, and then the connection between the fans and the band, between the art jam, and then the reveal of the art, and they're going to send that out to be burned, and they're going to have everything be connected together between fan and band. Trey saying like, we literally can't do this without any of you, like the whole reason we're here is because of you all. And then they play fucking Harry Hood, and like Megan said, it's the first one with a glow stick war, which, save your opinions about the environment, like glow stick wars look really cool and they're a part of the Fish mystique. Like, let's just be real, don't throw them at people, but like, they look really nice. And like that was something that to that point in Fish's history just didn't exist, and suddenly became like a thing that we have at every Fish show in these very special moments. Like, and then they walk off the stage and they come back and they still have one more set to play. Like, it's just there's an argument to be made that this is if not the best, one of the best sets they've ever played in their career.
Yeah, I buy it.
I buy it too. I love listening to Trey when he's like, keep throwing those things, get more of them. Like, let's keep doing it. But it reminds me on a much lesser scale, clearly not as epic, but at Mondegreen, I think it was the third night, they opened with Mike's, and Mike's side just exploded with beach balls. And there were hundreds and hundreds of beach balls just flying over the crowd all at the same moment, right when Mike started. And it was just one of those moments, and you could see the band like loving it. And it was just one of those moments of like the crowd and the band creating this like joy together, and we're giving them back to each other and this energy exchange. And I love that. And I love that that's kind of memorialized in that moment. And I cannot believe there's not an official release of The Great Went.
Yeah.
What
the sound
happening?
The sound is pretty good because it was
doesn't matter.
It was like radio, right? So it's not like the Deer Creek show sounds horrible still.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
And we're
I agree.
We're half a century later. I mean,
yeah, but then all of a sudden you have to hear him go WKRX or whatever he does, like in the middle of the end of like the art jam, and you're like, stop.
Well, it's part of the experience.
It is kind of cute. You're like, oh, it's radio. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably get into shows that we want to recommend, but I do just want to say from night one, and this is just, more origin stories for me. So I apologize to anyone who wants to tap out at this point in time, but I bought Rift, I bought a live one, and then my mom bought me for my birthday in 2001 the DVD of Bittersweet Motel. And the only reason she bought it was because she knew I really liked Dave Matthews Band, and she was at Best Buy, and there was like a recommendation of like Fish's Bittersweet Motel next to a Dave Matthews Band DVD she'd already got me. So she bought it for me, and she was like, I hope you like it. And I watched it, and the solo that Trey does from that Simple on night one, like that is the reason I'm a Fish fan. I had never heard anything like that. I'd never, like, his hat's all weird. His shirt's way too big. He like bends over at some point in time while he's like really emphasizing the notes. And it sounds unlike any other exit jam from a Simple that we get. And then it goes in that weird Odd Couple jam. And at some point you get My Soul, which is forgivable because it's a really good set. But I just want to throw that out there. Like that is that and the Squirming Coil, when Paige just looks out at 70,000 people and just goes, stick around, and walks away. Oh my God.
Such a boss move.
Can I, before we move off of this, can I just do a quick tangent? Because I meant to do this like last week and then I didn't.
Summer 97. This is the tangent episode.
Well, because you mentioned Dave Matthews, and I should have done this a long time ago, but I wanted to quickly, while we're talking about Dave Matthews, which we're not, but while it came up, talk about our friends at the corner of Gray Street, which is an Osiris podcast. It's about Dave Matthews, and they interviewed Rick from Goose about his Dave Matthews fandom, and it's such an amazing conversation if you like Dave Matthews, if you like Goose, but to hear these three guys like really go deep on Dave Matthews was really cool. And I think so many of us had those experiences with Dave Matthews back in the mid to late 90s that anyway, I really enjoyed that.
I just wanted to lead to Goose covering Crush or The Stone.
Oh my God. That'd be amazing.
I don't know.
Like so Bartender.
Bartender.
Come on.
Rick fucking loves Bartender.
Yeah.
Obviously. Who doesn't?
Maybe, well, they are playing at MSG in a few weeks. Dave Matthews Band's going to be there.
Yep.
And so is Goose. I'll be there. So who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows what's going to happen? Something. All right, Brian, Megan, tell us a show that we need to make sure to not miss.
Okay, but before we do that, since it's tangent time, can I just tell two really important short little things about my experience on this tour?
Yes.
One of which I told you recently, and you did not know this about me. And that is I have gotten rid of all of my pictures from this tour that I took because
this is so great.
I shaved my dreadlocks off before this. And what happened was I cut my dreadlocks off and my hair looked horrendous. And my friend was like, let's just shave your head. And so I shaved my head. And so I had a shaved head. And so when I was at these shows in Virginia Beach, I had a whole round of film that my friend took of us in the parking lot. And I had a homemade dress on and some really bad sneakers and a shaved head. And so these pictures no longer exist. And if you have some of them, you better burn them and get rid of them.
We got to see these.
I have a few pictures of me with a shaved head, but not from this tour. And the other thing is the next night in Walnut Creek, my parents came. They lived outside of Raleigh then, and they came to the show, and it was a torrential rainstorm. Everybody knows the story. It was epic. And my parents sat in ponchos up on the lawn and got rained on the entire show, stuck it out. And I went down into the pavilion and danced with my friends and did not hang out with them, even though they were at their first Phish show to do something with me. And because I had asked them, because Phish means so much to me. And so it was a real 19-year-old's move there that summer. But it was a crazy summer. But yes, we can get back on topic now.
No, that was good. Thank you for bringing that up. I gotta, if you're out there and you have summer '97 photos and you see someone with a shaved head that looks like Megan, please send us the photos.
No, don't. Please do not.
please do. Thank you.
I thought you guys knew that I had shaved my head, but apparently not.
I think I knew that you had dreads and then they went away, but I didn't realize that you had a whole like time that you were. I mean,
for like 9 months to a year,
this,
I did not have a shaved
head. This is so great. Okay. What do you got, Megan?
For shows? Well, I feel like we've talked about a lot of them. I mean, I feel like 8/10 has to be released. I think the Great One should be released, even regardless of the fact that we already have it. But I really do like that 7:31 Shoreline show. You've got a great Limb by Limb. The Yem that closes the first set just has that magical jam. The Gym we talked about. And then I love this Mike's too. It has that like really like rocking authority to such an intense peak. So I think this would be a great show to release as well.
Brian, what about you?
I second all those shows. I'm just going to add 8/2, night one of The Gorge. This is just a really strong, complete show. You get a great theme from the bottom to open, Ghost midway through the first set, beautiful Divided Sky, great Wolfman's, huge Melt and set one, and then the Disease into Tweezer. And this is the first Tweezer since February, which is really fascinating. Second set gets a little songy after that, but you do get the Sirens in Waiting in the Velvet Sea. That's that we all love. And then you get a Harry Hood encore where Trey asks Kuroda to turn off the lights, which is both one of the coolest things that Kuroda would do, and also probably like, what are you serious, man? You want me to turn off the lights? This is my job. But playing Harry Hood in the dark on the side of that, just that amphitheater that looks over the Columbia River. You feel like you are in the middle of absolute nowhere because you are underneath the stars. Hearing that song is just an amazing thing. So I think that's one of the shows that I think this whole tour, there are a few of these tours that should be released in full. I would pay $5,000 for the numbered box set type of thing, whatever it's going to be. But like, this is one of those tours where we should ultimately get that, but A2's got to be there.
I like that.
I like when I get the emails from like GratefulDead.net and it's like these 4 shows from '78 are being released and it's 600 CDs and you're like,
yeah,
like who's buying this? It's going to take up an entire room just to like store these
600 CDs.
It's like, each one is what, like 20 minutes.
It's like Dylan releasing an entire tour of the same show over and over again. And I'm a huge Dylan fan, but if Phish were to do this, if Phish were to release full tours on box set, I'm absolutely buying it because I think it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
That's different.
It is different. We talked about Alpine briefly, but the Reba from Alpine Valley is really just super powerful. What a great that shows. It's strange, but it's also, I don't know if you were talking about the Ain't Love Funny earlier, but it felt like they were kind of leading into these more emotional kind of like jams as the tour went on, and I wonder if that was just how it evolved organically or what, but I feel like you get more of those in the last kind of, third of the tour.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there was a sense of how well things were going. They just were feeling reflective and almost more emotional, because you definitely hear that. But I don't know. It's a good thought.
That's all. I think we've literally talked about every single other thing that I had notes on.
We did a
What
good
do you got,
job.
Megan?
Yeah, I
Do you have
know. I think that's
what's
it.
your live fish? What's your live fish recommendation?
If I only
is it
have
everything?
one, I would say it's probably 8-10.
Yeah. Same.
Like if it's just gonna be a digital only, I think that I'm in agreement
Yeah.
with you guys. I think if we're talking releases like what they did with Philly this year, the Great Went.
It has to
Like
be.
I get that we're waiting on the band not playing music anymore to release these big shows 10, 20, 30 years from now when we all are cashing our social security checks that I hope we still have and we all got retirement flowing in and we're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to spend $25,000 on a gold-plated big cypress. Come on. I'm going to do that." But there is something magical about the band playing right now still and saying, "Hey, for any of you getting into the band, this is a festival that we once played that meant a lot, and we
Yeah.
really, really recommend you all listen to it. And for all of you who have been around, here's something for you to hold that like showcases an amazing memory or something that happened as you were getting into this band."
And maybe then they could listen to it before they play a festival too, as like a cool thing to do.
Well,
I'm just fascinated that we got you comparing Mondegreen's emotional peak to the Great Went,
I
and
know.
then 5 minutes later, ripping it apart. You and
It
your
wasn't the emotional peak. It was just a moment that was similar to it.
When you brought up
But-
Mondegreen, I thought you were going to say something horrible, but you actually said something
It
really
was
nice about
good.
it.
I loved
talk
Mondegreen.
about pissing in the ears of your listeners, right? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. There are great moments from Mondegreen. We should start calling you Meg DeGreen.
Oh no.
725 would be my other choice because I think that show is really unique and fun, and the sound isn't great. And I think like there's some really fun moments in that show.
Sorry, I'm
What-
distracted by the chat. I mean,
Which
did the
show
Went
is it
have
on?
Questlove?
I know.
It's so good.
That's an all timer comment, just like
I
right on the
know.
money. That's great.
Really
So good.
Okay.
Do we have
Well-
one big takeaway that we can all say here?
Yeah.
Because
think we should.
I got like a paragraph I want to read here.
Yeah, I mean,
I worked really hard on it.
I feel like, this is the beginning of the next, the next era, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know if I thought about that before going back to this, but you can hear, like I was saying about 817, it sets up this next tour that's just monstrous. And I think about the next show I saw after 811 was Champagne 1119, which was like
Oh,
so different and
amazing.
so like that's when to me like because I saw a bunch of 97 fall 97 shows. Every show is fucking amazing. It
Yeah.
was just like every day is great. Every day is great. And that this tour set it up, as you were kind of alluding to earlier, Brian.
Yeah, it does. I mean, my big thought is that the reinvention experiment worked. Not only did they figure out a way to reshape their sound around groove, thus increasing democratic jamming, but their fan base seems to love it. They played some of the best shows of their career, all while taking massive risks, and they leave Limestone knowing that they're on a high as long as they maintain it. They're still going to play one of the greatest tours of their lives, but for now, they've extended the Fish mystique while restructuring what it means going forward. I think that like we're going forward knowing that they can do anything, and I think to your point, yeah, this is the start of this next era of Fish in a really, really phenomenal way, but also can be seen as this kind of celebration of what they've done.
Megan, what do you have?
When we talked about the Top Tour 21, the summer Europe tour, I talked about the funk being a passageway, not a destination. And this is their first use of a certain type of music to get them to a new style of jamming. And it's so successful for them. And I think it was so exciting for them and for the fan base. And yeah, I just think it just reinvigorates them, and it's thrilling to imagine what's going to happen next for them. And I'm so excited we get to cover that tour. But I think reflecting on this tour, I don't think I realized how much they evolved during this tour, and that was really exciting to listen back to, just seeing that
Totally.
evolution happen in real time.
I felt the same.
Do you guys want me to read you something from the Farmer's Almanac, Volume 6?
Yes, please.
Please.
Which is a reader review. You know, they had like submissions for every show. This one from 8/11, the second night of Deer Creek, reads in part: the Squirming Coil Encore was great. Beautiful solo by Paige. But besides that, there was nothing special. Let me rephrase this. Bad show. Good Gaiuti. That was submitted by a gentleman named RJB. So I just want to share that with you guys. I don't think I've ever shared that publicly before.
God, that's unbelievable.
I'm still embarrassed by it, but I wanted to share it with you guys as we wrap up this tour.
That's amazing.
If I gave you my fantasy tour handle from the mid 2000s, you would probably find much more embarrassing stuff, but that is amazing. I read that book cover to cover in the fall of 2001 while trying to learn a lot about fish, which means I read your insights.
Yeah.
Before
there's some other ones.
Before we were
there's
met.
some good ones, but I'll only read you the bad ones.
That's
okay.
amazing. What a moment captured in history.
What a moment. They probably,
Good
whoever
guy,
read that
yeah.
was like, we're gonna put this fucking idiot in here. Like, can you believe this shit? Okay.
Little did they know.
Little did they know. Okay, so next week we have the only tour remaining that was outside the top 10 from the fan perspective. It was ranked number 12 by fans and number 5 by us. Brian, do you want to tell us what tour this is?
Yeah, you should all be ashamed of yourselves because this deserved to be in the top 5. This is summer 1993. A tour that broke the mold for Fish. We don't have summer 97. We don't have fall 97. We don't have anything from 94. We don't have anything from 95 without this tour. This is one of the most important tours that any band has ever embarked upon. I cannot wait to talk about it. There is so much that happens in this tour that reshapes who Fish was for the first 10 years of their career and who they are going forward. And in very different ways than what we just talked about in terms of the reinvention from this year. I'm so excited to get into this. It holds up in ways that just look like you look at summer 97 and fall 97 on a piece of paper and you're like, holy crap, that looks like the coolest set list I've ever seen. Oh my God, I can only imagine that's like a 20-minute version because there's like 4 songs in a set. This does not look like that, but when you get into it, oh my God, there's so much depth going on here. There's so many wild, crazy chances and risks taken. I can't wait.
It's a good one. Brian, just for logistical purposes, let's just say that we have listeners who haven't gone back to this tour yet or co-hosts. There's at least 2 one-set Horde shows. Are we including those? Or are we only including, like, are those part of our listening, or is it only the 2-set shows?
That's a good question. Because I go through via the jam charts and then listen based off of shows that are flowing as I do my re-listen. So I think I had, I guess this may be the easiest way to put it. It is very light until the most unfished city in America gets one of the best fish shows to that point in time in early August. So you can kind of hop around, but once you get to August, man, you are going to be just like, you're going to be
great.
Swimming. Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's pretty great.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited.
It's going to be good.
Tomorrow.
I love Forbin 77's comment about what I read earlier. He said, "Our luxurious, regrettable takes were only amongst friends back then." So true. Regrettable takes now.
Unless you send them to the Farmer's Almanac, and then they live on forever.
Forever. Oh, I didn't even know I liked Coyote. All right, guys, we did it.
At least you didn't talk about 46 days or something.
No,
At least
that
it
would've
wasn't
been
around
maybe
then.
better.
Yeah.
Before we
Maybe better.
go,
That's- yes,
we
please.
should go through our top. We should remind fans of where we're at heading into the top 5.
Okay.
I got the list pulled up in front of me. Do you want me to go through it, or do you guys
Yeah.
want to hop back and
Do
forth?
it.
All right,
No.
I'll go.
Do it.
I think we should do
All
it.
right. So I'm not going to share the fan vote. We're going to do like a recap episode where we're kind of going to figure out where if we got everything right. But just so you guys know where we got to the top 5 here. So tour number 25 is fall 96. Tour number 24 is spring 1992. Number 23 is fall 2018. Number 22 is spring 94. Number 21 is summer Europe 1997. Number 20 is summer 1999. 19 is summer Japan 2000. 18, spring 2023. 17, winter/spring 1993. 16, fall 2013. 15, fall 98. 14, summer 03. 13, summer 2015. 12, winter 99. 11, summer 2017. 10, winter 2003. 9, summer 1994. 8, fall 2021. 7, summer 1995. And we just concluded number 6, summer US 1997. And we'll be back next week with number 5, which is summer 1993.
Thanks
Top
for running that down.
5. Listening to those just makes me remember, like, it's funny which ones pop out as like my favorites that I like, that the journey of listening back to it was my favorite in school.
Yeah, we'll have to recap it at the end, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, we'll do that at some point before the end of this year or early next year. But really excited to continue. We've got 5 tours left. Lots and lots of really great music coming up. A lot of just like hyperbole and just gushing
So much.
about amazing
Yeah.
fish. Some great
And-
memories.
And Brian, the first week of December, I think, is when we're going to do our next draft.
Our next draft,
I'm nervous just
Which-
thinking about it.
which is
is-
going to be our 25 plus minute jam draft. So we have a
There's
list.
So many. The list it's really big.
Meg, just so you know, you don't have to listen to every jam in the draft. The way you strategize. Well, actually, I won't tell you how to strategize. Never mind.
Listen, I know how to strategize. It's just that I don't have the kind of memory where I can remember which jams are which just by the freaking number dates. Like you two weirdos can. Remember, you're the weird ones. It just happens to work really
Yeah,
well
it's
for
true.
this podcast.
It's true.
But
That's why we
my
do this.
brain, I know, but my brain doesn't work like that. So to me, that's just a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, it's regular.
Look.
Right in regular life, it's different.
All I'll say is, as a 16-year-old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid who got into this hippie band, I logged onto a fantasy tour forum one day and said, "Hey guys, who wants to tell me about the good fish shows?" And everyone came at me and was like, "Get the fuck out of here, noob. You don't know what you're talking about." And because of that,
Yeah.
I developed this brain for this band.
I will
Not-
get you back.
Not for the US stock market, not for any newfound technology, not for banking, not for architecture, for fish.
I agree with that.
Your origin
Brian.
story. It's your superpower origin story.
I started in
No
a similar
superpower.
place. I think you have to you had to figure some of it out yourself before people started like giving you the time of day.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
Um,
There's a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
So to the Incredible Perps question, how many 25 plus minute jams are there in total? At least
question.
120 based on my estimate of looking at the sheet.
A lot.
There's a
So
lot.
actually more than that, probably like
Mhm.
150.
Way more, right?
Yeah, maybe 150.
There's 30. Yeah, there's like 150. It gets, so the way we have it organized, just so you know, so you all can prepare.
We will share the list right before.
Yeah.
We're going to share the list. We should probably share it in the next week, but
Yeah.
we have, I think 8 sections broken down, some of them based on timing. There's less jams than there are others. As we all know, those are the segments that are really difficult. It's like drafting a quarterback. There's like 3 good quarterbacks. Maybe one of them works out. So, you have to really think hard in some of those segments. Some of the other ones there's been a lot of 25 to 26 minute long jams that are included in this list that should totally be included in this list. But ultimately, you could pick 5 of those and be happy.
Mhm.
It's going to be so fun. It's going to be
It's
so
gonna be
fun. By the time we join you all again and you join us next Monday, we will be 1 week closer to the end of this amazing series. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
We will
We'll
be
see you
back.
on Monday. We're gonna be back on Monday, right?
We're going to be back on
see.
Monday. We may have a new president by then. We may not.
I hope we do. Will you all take care this week? It's gonna be a week. Everybody take care, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.